and Louisiana, we are 100% with you. We're praying for you. We're working closely with your leaders and officials. And I will be visiting the impact zone tomorrow to ensure that you're receiving full support and cooperation from the federal government. And on Saturday, we think we're going back to Texas, and also we will be going to Louisiana.
We have reporters all over the region, and we begin with Steve Harrigan in Rosenberg, Texas. Steve?
Kimberly, this is just like standing under a faucet. It just doesn't stop. It's coming in sideways. It's been coming in sideways since dawn. It's cold. This is 9 inches of rain in the past 24 hours alone. What does that mean? It means conditions here around Houston, in the suburbs, getting worse every hour. Neighborhood after neighborhood now in the dark, declaring mandatory evacuations. It's getting much more dangerous. City officials now saying they will not be able to help people in certain of these neighborhoods. It's simply too tough to get around. And you can see many of the roads being flooded. Behind me, actually, we've been watching a giant sinkhole grow. That's because so much water has been dumped in this area. There are real questions about the structural soundness of small bridges. The shelters are filling up. You have to call ahead of time. They're even turning furniture stores into shelters. People are arriving wet and cold. When you see people around, they just look stunned, looking for something to eat, looking for clothing. The shelters have put out word. They need doctors, they need nurses, they need baby formula. Kimberly, back to you.
Wow. All right. Thanks, Steve. Stay safe and great job reporting for us. Let's go to Trace Gallagher, who is in the Woodlands, Texas, which is just north of Houston. Trace?
Yeah, Kimberly, we're about 40 miles north of where Steve Harrigan just gave you his report, and it's kind of a little bit of a different situation up here because the rain has died down really for the first time in several hours. I mean, it was an absolute deluge here all day long. We had flooding. We saw homes underwater. There were cars underwater, parking lots. They shut down one of the main interstates that runs from out here in Woodlands, one of the suburbs of Houston, into downtown Houston. It's going to be bearish for people to try to get anywhere near the city. We should point out they're trying to avoid exactly what's going on down there in Houston and the suburbs below there by doing the opposite. They are miles north of us because they're very concerned about one of the rivers which is overflowing its banks. They're trying to let as much water as they possibly can out, but they're already at record levels out. They can only let so much. They're getting people out of there just in case the river overflows the banks. West of Houston, very much the same story, getting people out of their homes now before any chance of flooding. We should note the rescue totals have now gone up. As of right now, they've rescued some 3,050 or so people. That's about 1,000 up from the number we were given just early this morning. So about 1,000 rescues today alone. They have mobilized 3,000 Texas National Guardsmen for this effort, but they have every single National Guard, 12,000 of them will be involved in this effort. And now we're being told the Border Patrol is also being mobilized. They're pulling them away from the border to come up to Houston and help out in this massive effort. They keep telling us the rain is going to slow down and eventually go away, but today we saw very little sign of that, Kimberly.
All right, thanks, Trace, for that. And let's now hear from Caroline Shively, who is in Houston, inside the convention center, where people are still taking shelter. Caroline?
Hi there, Kimberly. We've just stepped out on the backside of the convention center to show you a very unusual helicopter landing pad. They've created one out of an interstate. This is I-45. It's the Pierce elevated landing, if you know this part of the road. We've seen helicopters coming through here. They're landing dead on in the middle of the interstate. They have been plucking folks off roofs, people who can't get to those high water vehicles, people who are past the point where they can be rescued by boats. They've had the helicopters. They put it down. We have some video earlier of one of the helicopters. We have seen Red Cross helicopters, National Guard helicopters, other military helicopters come in. They touch down, and you see the people run off of there, clutching their belongings, clothing, anything they could get a hold of. Then they go to the buses, and the buses can get them here to the convention center. 5,500 people have already gone here into the convention center. That is above capacity. 5,000 is what the max was, they said, but they're not closing these doors. Any buses that come, any people who come on foot here in the convention center, they're taking you in, even by helicopter now. Kimberly, back to you.
All right. Thanks, Caroline. A lot of news out of the White House tonight. And for the very latest, is it ready? Okay, let's go to Ed Henry in Washington. There he is.
Hey, Kimberly, good to see you. The president will be joined on his trip to Texas tomorrow by First Lady Melania Trump. Significant because she's been known for her compassion, taking time out to visit children's hospitals on her early trips overseas with the president. Tomorrow, they will be in Texas trying to deal with the fallout from the storm. Important to note, they will be meeting with the governor of Texas in Austin, not going to Houston, because the president does not want his security needs to overwhelm first responders on the ground. Their time, of course, better spent on search and rescue efforts that are still going on. This is all hands on deck for the administration. Vice President Mike Pence today traveled to FEMA headquarters for briefings. He also did a series of radio interviews where he estimated a shocking number. About 500,000 Americans, the vice president said, will get some kind of federal assistance after the cleanup from this storm. That's consistent with what the president said at a news conference at the White House, where he said the administration will stop at nothing to help.
We see neighbor helping neighbor, friend helping friend, and stranger helping stranger. And you see that all over. You watch on television, you just see such incredible work and love and teamwork. We are one American family. We hurt together, we struggle together, and believe me, we endure together.
Now, as all of this plays out here in the United States, the president still dealing with the crisis in North Korea. In the last few hours, the communist nation fired a missile over Japan. The Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, calling this, quote, the most serious and grave threat that his nation has faced yet in this entire standoff. The missile, we should report, broke into 3 different pieces before falling into the Pacific Ocean. It does not appear to have injured anyone or done any damage to Japanese assets, but a sign that this whole situation is far from over. Meanwhile, NBC News reporting tonight that Robert Mueller, the special counsel, of course, is now looking at whether or not President Trump was involved in a knowingly false statement when he helped craft the initial response to his son, Donald Trump's Jr.'s statement about that meeting last summer at Trump Tower with the Russian lawyer. I'm getting strong pushback tonight from people in the president's inner circle trying to shoot down this report, saying that the president did not commit any kind of crime, that he had a very small amount of time spent in crafting that statement about his son's meeting at Trump Tower, and they think in the end the special counsel will find nothing. Kimberly.
All right. Thanks, Ed, for that update. Pleasure to have you. Okay, let's take it around the table. Greg, if you want to talk about the storm, the aftermath, and what people are experiencing now. We'll talk about that first.
Well, it really does make you question the portrayal of a divided nation, which, you know, all of us kind of contribute to. And it made me think about where do you seek out moral guidance? And you don't need it from a political leader. I don't think you need moral guidance from a political leader. I don't think you need it from a religious leader. I think if you look around you and you look at the people there, Americans can handle massive catastrophes pretty damn good without inspiration. They're not inspired to do that. They're just naturally doing that. You couple that with the nature of our system, the United States. If you compare catastrophes of a similar kind, country by country, thousands upon thousands are killed, millions are injured, but for some reason in a system like ours, which is so resilient, which is a decentralized free market system that makes it easier for rescues, for housing to be found, for supplies to be delivered, for evacuations to be made quickly, it's because of a system that is decentralized and people can come from all over and do things, and it's a rich country. So when you have these two kinds of things, where you have a free market, you have a free people, you have a system that works even when it's called xenophobic or bigoted. Right. In seemingly impossible times, this xenophobic, bigoted country goes out and saves people of every color. You have black people saving white people saving black people. There is no color. There's no identity politics. There's nothing like that. All you see are humans doing the right thing in a system that benefits doing the right thing.
Yes, it really does give you pause to reflect on what matters in life. You see this kind of human suffering, then you see people coming together, putting their lives on the line, like those that serve our country, to try to save, to make a difference, someone who's in peril.
It certainly makes you count your blessings, right?
It does,
you start
indeed.
complaining during the day, you realize it could be a whole lot worse. But one thing I think has been interesting looking at the coverage of this and listening to the officials on the ground talking to the local communities, they have told them directly, do not wait on us to come rescue you. If you have a neighbor who can help you, jump in the boat. If you have boats, come and get in. Don't wait for us to get there, because we have limited resources, and the only way that you're going to be able to get out of a lot of these situations is by relying on your fellow Houstonian to get you out. I think the president's visit is obviously going to be important for political reasons, obviously, because we live in that kind of environment. But he is going to feel humbled, I think, when he gets to the ground and sees the devastation, but also some kind of hope and American experience and a healthy American attitude when it comes to helping each other.
Yeah, very much so. So this is a good opportunity for the president to show his compassionate side. He likes to rise to the occasion, especially when he sees a nation and states in peril.
Well, so far, I think the federal response has been very effective, and there's been great coordination among the local and state authorities with the feds. Hopefully we can maintain that, because it looks like, based on these pictures, the worst is yet to come for some of these people. But I do think that Harvey has shown what Texas is made out of. It's unbelievable, the quiet grit, the determination, resilience, the compassion, the resilience that these people are showing. And it's not just the Texas National Guard, and it's not just the local police and fire departments. It's your average Joe on the street sacrificing himself to go help a neighbor. And it's just amazing to see. Texas is so independent. They're not complaining. There's not a lot of hysteria. There's not a lot of whining. It's just this quiet determination where people are helping each other out. It's also really refreshing to not see a lot of armchair quarterbacking going on. Not a lot of politicians are politicizing this. The mayor of Houston is a Democrat. The governor is a Republican. There's not a lot of second guessing going on. I can't believe I'm seeing this in America. It's just absolutely baffling.
Will it stay that way?
Will it stay that way? We will see. And no looting so far. I guess if you're a looter in Texas, some bad things can happen to you. Haven't seen a lot of price gouging either. That's a shock. But I think that speaks to the spirit of Texas. I've seen some amazing things out there just looking at television over the weekend. Alligators on people's back doorsteps. I saw a shark on a highway swimming in the water. Like Sharknado. I saw a hawk sitting in someone's taxi cab. Greg and I were saying, the president was using the term biblical. Well, there's some really weird biblical things that are going on down there in Houston. I can't even imagine how I would be experiencing that as a guy from the Northeast, but I think Texas has it figured out, and God bless them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you look at the numbers, and we have some interesting statistics here, 450,000 people are likely, Richard, to seek federal aid. So these are people in need, and 30,000 people seek emergency shelter, and 75,000 911 calls. Can you imagine?
No, I mean, I've lived through one of these things. So I'm from Miami, so I've lived through Hurricane Andrew. My mom is a registered nurse, so I know what it is to not have your parent there. My mom would leave us and go to the hospital and be there overnight because she's a critical care nurse.
Help people, yeah.
So shout out to all the nurses and doctors who spend the night in the hospital. So big shout out to them and doing what they do. But this is we're all Houston strong tonight. I'm wearing my Houston colors, Houston Rocket colors tonight because of that. And I want to give a big shout out to all those individuals who are working those extra hours to make sure the volunteers, the police officers, the firefighters who are doing yeoman's work. You guys get a big round of applause from me and all the Americans all across the country tonight.
Yeah, all the first responders. You always remember them, in these times of need, but let's also remember them.
And their families.
Yeah, and their families who sacrifice a lot like you had to when your mother went to go answer the call to help other people. So important life lessons we're reminded of once again. And coming up, President Trump offers a full-throated defense of his controversial pardon of Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Stay with us.
A major counterpunch from President Trump today after facing bipartisan criticism for pardoning former Sheriff Joe Arpaio on Friday. President Trump offered a vigorous defense of his clemency grant, highlighting several far more questionable pardons by previous presidents.
I wanted to look at some of the other people that were pardoned over the years. And if you look at, as an example, President Clinton pardoned Mark Rich, who was charged with crimes going back decades, including illegally buying oil from Iran, while it held 53 American hostages, wasn't allowed to do that, selling to the enemies of the United States. He was pardoned after his wife donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Clintons. Then you have dangerous criminals. President Clinton pardoned Susan Rosenberg, a member of the Weathered Underground, charged as part of a bank robbery that led to a guard and 2 police officers being killed. Drug dealers. President Clinton commuted the sentence of Carlos Vignali, a central player in a cocaine ring that stretched from California to Minnesota. Criminal leaker. You've heard the word leaker? President Obama commuted the sentence of Chelsea Manning, who leaked countless sensitive and classified documents to WikiLeaks, perhaps and others. But horrible, horrible thing that he did, commuted the sentence.
So you have President Bill Clinton and President Obama, Kimberly, that pardoned drug dealers, terrorists, murderers, fugitives, dope dealers, and then President Trump pardons a sheriff, and all hell breaks loose on the left.
Well, that's indeed what happened. I mean, there's no better way to describe it. I mean, you would have thought that he pardoned like a mass murderer.
Right.
I mean,
like Charles Manson got pardoned.
25 murders. But no, listen, this is something that, I mean, I think is consistent with what he was saying during his campaign, when he was out there on the trail. Sheriff, Arpaio was definitely supportive of President Trump and the whole movement. So he did something which seems to be loyal to support somebody that he feels was supportive of him and who he believed in terms of what he was doing in Arizona. That's what this is to me.
This is a loyalty play, also a law and order play, Richard. How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess loyalty pays if you're with Donald Trump.
Well, Bill Clinton pardoned his own brother, Richard.
Well, all right. Well, I mean, so here's why this, and I know you're going to make fun of me saying it, but here's why this is problematic, right? So there's a couple of reasons why. One, this is 266 days into his presidency. Yes, Obama made controversial pardons. It happened on his last day in office when it didn't matter. This president has to run again.
Aren't you saying he's going to be impeached? If he's going to be impeached, he's got to get these pardons done.
Well, I don't know if the president's going to be impeached. I don't know what this investigation is going to do. No, I'm not going to say that at all because I don't know. But here's what listen, every president understands this. You have to expand your base and your reelect. This president said to a lot of Latino voters, I really don't care about you because Joe Arpaio is a lightning rod for Latinos, whether you're Democrat or whether you're Republican. Latinos have a big problem with Joe Arpaio, and mainstream Republicans get that, which is why Paul Ryan, Jeff Flake, Mitch McConnell, John McCain said, this is awful.
So he should pander to Latinos and not pardon his buddy?
Richard, he couldn't wait to the end of the term. It's only a 6-month sentence.
This is so bad. This is so bad. Let's also remember that the investigation for Joe Arpaio started under the Bush Justice Department. It started in June 2008 under George W. Bush's Justice Department under Alberto Gonzales, who said, there's some questionable stuff going on in Maricopa County. We need to look into this. And that's where this started. This guy has a track record of racially profiling. He's been told by Republican-appointed judges and Democratically appointed judges to stop this profiling as an officer of the court, and he continued to do it.
Okay.
This is problematic.
Problematic.
At best.
Is this problematic?
Every president pardons somebody that ends up being controversial. This just happens to be Donald Trump. No matter who he would have pardoned, the left would have gone nuts about it. I reject this idea that all Latinos don't like Joe Arpaio, because I know Latinos in Arizona, where I lived for a very long time, who are actually big fans of him because they were victims of illegal immigrant crime in that state. I understand there are other issues surrounding this, but when you look at the details of what he was accused of, he didn't get a trial by a jury of his peers. No. This was a decision made by a judge. And if you look at the circumstances surrounding his reelection, George Soros dumped $2 million into his reelection bid. You had leftists coming in and organizing against Joe Arpaio after he'd won 6 terms by 65, 70% each time. This was a witch hunt. And the administration, the Obama administration, did not like the fact that Joe Arpaio was working with the federal government to turn over criminal aliens that had committed crimes against local communities, including immigrant populations, and that's why they went after him.
They don't like because he made him wear pink underwear.
That too.
Speaking of pink underwear, Greg Gutfeld.
Yes, don't knock it till you've tried it. Under the pants, though. You know,
Oh, my God.
you got to admit, Donald Trump enjoys tweaking those who are easily tweaked. President Obama, by the way, did similar things. He liked to poke the people who aren't in power because he knows that the people who aren't in power get really upset because they can't do anything about it. So what he just did is he just did something that you can't do anything about. But he did when he brought up those examples. What he was doing was he's highlighting a contrast between two types of thinking, and I'm going to talk about it in my monologue. Everything that Trump does is through the law and order prism, and oftentimes it can be flawed, but most of the time, the big picture, it's okay. So what he ends up doing is he pardons a law and order type guy, a sheriff who might have some problems, but a sheriff. President Obama operates from the oppressor versus oppressed mindset. So when he wants to pardon somebody, it's usually a radical. It's somebody who might have been involved in a cause, could have been a terrorist, but it was a cause, and he thinks it's a noble cause. So he accepts it because it's oppressor versus oppressed. So through that prism, President Obama always tends to favor people that we go, what are you talking about? And then meanwhile, liberals look at Trump and go, Arpaio, what are you talking about? I have a solution for this. No more damn pardons. Nobody likes them. Nobody likes pardons. There's only one good pardon ever. Only one good pardon, and that was when President Obama pardoned Willie McCovey on tax evasion. Willie McCovey, number 44, one of the greatest San Francisco. See, but I'm showing you how personal a pardon is. I liked it because I liked Willie McCovey. That's how biased and personal a decision is that I thought it was okay because he was one of my favorite players.
And I attended his last game and have the ticket
1980.
and was interviewed by local Channel 2.
521 home runs.
Well, I'm pro-pardon because I might get into some trouble
I knew
there.
it.
Directly ahead, President Trump just got rid of one of President Obama's most controversial executive orders. Greg has a story when the 5 returns.
Today, President Trump revealed his plan to roll back limits on military gear for law enforcement, reversing President Obama's policy that banned armored cars, high-caliber weapons, and so on. Remember all that when the media made militarization the big bad wolf? Their misguided emotion portrayed enhanced security as somehow threatening, when its only goal was to prevent violence by presenting overwhelming strength. Speak softly, big stick, it's highly persuasive. It's like the rhetoric Trump uses with immigration. A forceful position becomes the wall, reducing illegal crossing. Police armed with the best gear is similar, stopping violence without causing any. They become a wall between order and anarchy. What happens when that wall is missing? Well, you get Charlottesville, you get Berkeley in April, and you get Berkeley now. Where there's no order, there will be blood. President Obama saw the gear as intimidating, but who does it intimidate? I'd say the people about to do bad things. But President Obama has always viewed the world through the prism of radical politics, so he sides with that club. Trump's the reverse. Everything's seen through the prism of law and order, which explains the wall, militarization, boosting defense, pardoning Arpaio. A singular vision can be flawed, but the bigger picture can excuse the smaller mistakes. Trump won because of 3 words, law and order. Ignore that, Democrats. He'll win again. In this case, hindsight isn't just 20/20. It will win 2020.
Wow.
I just had to add that extra flourish,
Put a little
Kimberly.
extra sauce into that one.
Yeah, Kimberly,
Yeah.
militarization was a fancy word for extra gear that creates a perception of force so you don't have to use force. Isn't that the logic?
Well, right. But the thing is, I have a very strong opinion about this, having, worked as a prosecutor for so many years in Los Angeles and working gang details and all of that. The police need to have the tools that are necessary in order to do their job. And guess what? Some of the things that people were saying, oh, we can't have this, and stripping the police departments of the tools they need to do their job. It's like taking a stethoscope away from a doctor. It just doesn't make any sense. Some of these vehicles and the things that are armored, et cetera, that are all terrain, that can even go through flooded areas to help in times of a natural disaster like this and really provide relief to a community. So why would we want to take that away from them? Because we want to say the police are bad? We don't want them to have any of the things they need? I mean, they're not going to have uniforms next? Are you going to take away bulletproof vests? I mean, what else? Just leave them with the rubber bullets?
Yeah, there's always that argument, Jesse, like if you give somebody enhanced security, they're inherently more dangerous because they're more, like a guy in seatbelts will drive faster. So the argument is if they have more of this stuff, they're just going to be more dangerous when in fact they're just trying to protect themselves so they can protect you.
Yeah, the hardware is mostly defensive in nature. And it started when we saw those images after Ferguson of these police officers in tactical gear facing off against these shirtless, angry protesters. And people didn't like those images, especially in Obama's base. So he rescinded this deal. Trump just won on law and order, and now he's delivering the goods. Look at some of these things. Military-grade bulletproof vests, armored vehicles, tactical helmets. These things that are happening out there in the streets, increased gang activity, violent crime rose in cities over the last couple of years under the last administration. Antifa's running wild. So I think some Democrats think, for instance, we're going to use the police, these weapons against them while they protest the RNC. No. These things are used with explosive detonations, active shooter situations, large-scale riots, terrorism situations, drug raids, gang raids. These things are not your run-of-the-mill squaring off against one lonely protester.
Right.
And a lot of these things came in handy. You said it. These armored vehicles they used in Houston during these floods. One of the guys on the police side was wearing one of these military-grade helmets, which actually saved his life during the Orlando nightclub shooting. And then you had the armored vehicles that they used to hunt down the San Bernardino killers. So, you know, and they're not making new purchases. This stuff is being transferred, so they're not paying. This is recycled hardware. I thought Democrats liked recycling.
I was just going to say that liberals love recycling, except when it comes to giving equipment for the police, right? Do you remember when the Baltimore mayor said that we should give the protesters room to destroy?
Yeah.
Well, the cops have to be able to respond to terrorism, rioting, and they can't win because if they're not prepared, like we saw in Charlottesville, then they're accused of not being able to handle a dangerous situation.
Right.
But they've been accused by the Obama administration of being overly militarized and having too much equipment and hurting the feelings of criminals who really want the room to destroy, as the Baltimore mayor suggested. I think we need to point out as well that this is something the Obama administration allowed to go on for 7 years throughout his term, didn't rescind it until 2015. It was in place during the Clinton administration and the George W. Bush administration. So Trump really isn't doing anything that out of the ordinary by defaulting back to the previous policy.
Richard.
This is an insane policy. Maybe I'm the only voice of reason at this table, but let's take a city like Haverhill, Massachusetts. You've probably never heard of it, but they have 65,000 residents. They have, because of this particular act, 20 of these, like these 20-ton mine-resistant ambush vehicles. Tell me why in God's name does Haverhill, Massachusetts need 20-ton mine-resistant ambush vehicles?
Because another small city right outside of Boston, that was the scene where the Boston bombers fled.
Right. And you need 20-ton ambush vehicles
to destroy
You need 20 of them.
How many
you need 20 of them.
How many should they
20.
have, Richard? How many
You don't need any of those. That's why we have the military. We have military bases in all the states.
Scene of a crime that fast.
Right? Here's the problem with this.
911 military.
Here's the problem. And listen, I'm not the only person that agrees that this is egregious.
So wait,
Senator Rand Paul also feels the same way. And when he gets when he gets back to the Senate, he's introducing a bill called Stop the Militarizing of Our Law Enforcement, because it moves us closer, one step closer to tyranny, and it shreds our civil liberties. Because what ends up happening is when you give police departments this overwhelming force, you shred the Fourth Amendment, you shred the Eighth Amendment, and you make police departments, and you make police departments the judge, the jury, and the executioner, and you take away due process.
A beautiful poem lacking all evidence.
Well,
you know who's shredding all of these the free speech is Antifa. The people that are going out there.
We can talk about Antifa in the next segment, but let's not mix and match here. What's happening?
No, but what you're doing is you're actually saying the police are stopping free speech. Fourth Amendment.
What happens to Mirandizing people? Now all this goes away when police officers can drive down an American city with a tank.
That's
what happened in Ferguson. That's exactly what happens. That's exactly what happened in Ferguson to peaceful protesters.
Oh my God.
Which is why we rolled this.
got run over by a tank.
They were tear gas, and there was tanks rolling down American streets.
Every place has tear gas.
We got to move on. We're going to keep talking about this anyway in the next block about Berkeley, so just hold on to your helmets. Far left radicals are caught on camera attacking peaceful conservative demonstrators.